Uh, we're so happy to welcome you to this interfaith text study. The idea is to know each other's traditions and to know other traditions than our own, and to also share our own traditions in this program. And it's a way of connecting with the other, building bridges of understanding, and creating more community and harmony amongst each other and our world. Human beings, as we know, are hardwired to fear the unknown. This is a primal fear, the unknown, right? Of course, perhaps we're also attracted to the unknown, to what is new. But by meeting the other and connecting and sharing our own perspectives, we bridge. We don't become unknown, we become known. We know each other, and we create connection. We create sympathy, empathy, and understanding. So Abrahamic Reunion, I'm Chris Miller. I'm Operations Director for Abrahamic Reunion. We do this work in Israel and the West Bank, Palestine, and we also do this in Florida and many places. Abed and I just returned from a program in Germany where we had 12 young Israeli and Palestinian peace builders, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and Druze, who traveled there for a week of training to meet with and understand each other and also gain skills for building peace in our world. And Abed actually helped lead text study with his father, Sheikh Hassan, and Rabbi Mordecai. And there was a beautiful study a session of text study in Germany with these young peace builders. And if you want information about that, Abrahamic Reunion will be sending out photos and all kinds of reports about that program. So that's a little bit about our work, and we have three esteemed presenters today. We have Sheikh Abed Elsalam Manasra from Rising Tide International, and he's a Muslim Sufi Sheikh in the Tariqa As-Salam, which is a Sufi order dedicated to peace, based in the Holy Land. And we have Rabbi Deb Smith, who's a rabbi in the Jewish Renewal and sometime member of Temple Adath Or in Fort Lauderdale when she's south. And currently she's up north, I believe, with her other congregation. Is it Or Halev? Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Or Halev. Okay, wonderful. And Ted Brownstein, who is a co-founder of Lake Worth Interfaith Network. He's a Baha'i and also a Jewish man, and interfaith peace builder in many ways and capacities, and has a deep appreciation for all the traditions and perspectives. So yeah, we're so great to have you all with us. And like Ted said, we'll have presentations from each of the presenters, and then small group discussion circles where you get to talk to each other and see what's moving you and what's happening. So, Ted, who's first? Oh, is the video first?
Let's do the video now and orient everybody to the text we'll be discussing.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, Catherine, you have some background noise, so you'll just have to listen. That's fine. Maybe during the small groups it'll be better. We'll see. So there's a short video that was Ted found for introducing the texts and the program for today. So we'll bring this up here.
The story of Prophet Yusuf in the Quran, also known as Joseph in the Bible, spans centuries, shaping faith and understanding across cultures. Both the Quran and the Bible tell this timeless tale, revealing deep truths about human nature and divine providence. Let's dive into the story of Yusuf, or Joseph, and see how God's wisdom transcends time and culture. Yusuf and Joseph will be used interchangeably in this video. Both the Quran and the Bible tell us that Yusuf, or Joseph, was favored by his father, Yaqub, also known as Jacob. This favoritism caused jealousy among his brothers. In the Quran, young Yusuf experiences a profound dream of 11 stars, the sun and the moon prostrating to him. The Bible describes a similar dream of sheaves of wheat bowing to Joseph's sheaf. These visions foreshadow Yusuf or Joseph's future prominence and set in motion the events that will shape his life. Driven by jealousy, Yusuf's brothers plot against him. In both accounts, they cast him into a well, reminiscent of how humanity often rejects God's chosen ones. Joseph, or Yusuf, is then sold into slavery and taken to Egypt, where his faith and character are severely tested. In prison, God's plan continues to unfold as Yusuf, or Joseph, interprets dreams for his fellow prisoners, setting the stage for his eventual rise to power. Yusuf, or Joseph's God-given ability to interpret dreams leads him from prison to the highest echelons of Egyptian government. Yusuf, or Joseph's wisdom in managing the coming crisis, earns him a position of great authority in Egypt. When famine brings them to Egypt seeking help, they don't recognize the brother they betrayed years ago. The Quran and Bible both beautifully portray Yusuf, or Joseph's, forgiveness and the reunion of the family. This resolution demonstrates God's power to bring good out of evil intentions and the importance of mercy and reconciliation. As we've seen, the story of Prophet Yusuf, or Joseph, carries profound messages that resonate across different faiths. Whether in the Quran or the Bible, we find timeless lessons about faith, perseverance, and the mysterious workings of divine providence. Thank you for joining me on this journey through sacred texts. If you found this comparison enlightening, please like and share this video and subscribe for more explorations of wisdom across scriptures.
Wonderful. So who's our first presenter tonight?
Okay, I am Rabbi Deb, and I'll start us off. So good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and to share with you a look at Joseph as a dreamer and a dream interpreter. And in order to do that, I am going to provide a little bit of background on Judaism and Judaism's take on dreams. But that's a whole program in and of itself, so this is just a little taste of that to introduce Joseph. Judaism believes that dreams are seen as a way for God to communicate with people, provide guidance, or foretell the future in some cases. Some sources suggest that dreams can be 1/60th of prophecy, in fact, and especially when they're interpreted by wise and knowing individuals like someone like Joseph. So many biblical dreams are for the benefit of not only an entire community, but also for the individual as well. Joseph is Judaism's most famous dreamer and dream interpreter. In fact, Joseph is a third-generation dreamer. So Jacob and Abraham precede him, and previously both of them encountered God and learned of their futures through dream encounters with God. Members of Joseph's family didn't hesitate to act on messages they received from God through dreams. The story of Joseph opens with him sharing a dream with his jealous brothers, as we saw in the little video. In Genesis 37, Joseph says to his brothers, "Hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright. Then your sheaves gathered around and bowed low to mine." His brothers assume the meaning of the dream is obvious and react accordingly, stating to him, "Do you mean to reign over us? Do you mean to rule over us?" Joseph then has another dream, which he again shares with his brothers in Genesis 37, verse 9, and he says, he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream, and behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." This time, he shares the dream with his father as well, who also reacts angrily. In Genesis 37, we read, "And when he told it to his father and brothers, his father berated him. He said to him, 'What is this dream you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow low to you to the ground?'" Jacob assumes that the 11 stars are the brothers, that he is the sun and Joseph's mother the moon, and that his dream is that the entire family will bow down to him, to Joseph. Joseph's dreams appear to be prophetic as they come true later in the narrative. We see Genesis 42, verse 5, which says, "Thus the sons of Israel were among those who came to procure rations, for the famine extended to the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the vizier of the land, and it was he who dispensed rations to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed low to him with their faces to the ground." We see here that Joseph recalled the dreams that he had dreamed earlier about them, regarding his first dream about the sheaves of grain, as the brothers are bowing to him in the hopes of procuring food, sustenance. A key to interpreting Joseph's second dream correctly can be found in Joseph's interpretation of the other dreams in the saga. We then later read about the wine steward and the baker. In the first scene in Genesis 40, Joseph is in prison, where he meets Pharaoh's chief wine steward and his chief baker, each of whom has had a disturbing dream. The wine steward dreams of a grapevine with 3 branches. The vine produces buds and then grapes in great and quick succession, and the wine steward squeezes the grapes into Pharaoh's cup, which he then places into Pharaoh's hand. Joseph explains that the 3 branches represent 3 days, at which time Pharaoh will return the wine steward to his former position of prominence and favor. But then there's the baker. The chief baker has a dream, and in it he has 3 baskets of baked goods on his head, and birds are eating up the contents of the baskets. Joseph again explains that the number 3 signifies days, but in this case the dream means that in 3 days the baker will be beheaded, his corpse impaled, and the birds will pick at his flesh. Sorry to have to report this. Then in Genesis 41, Pharaoh has 2 dreams. First, he's standing by the Nile, and he sees 7 fat cows grazing on the rushes, after which 7 scrawny cows come and devour them, without themselves getting any fatter. Next, he dreams of a stalk with 7 healthy ears of grains sprouting, followed by another stalk with 7 scorched ears of grain sprouting, which devoured the healthy grain stalk. So Joseph interprets both dreams as having the same message. Each of the 7s refers to 7 years, and the dream means that Egypt will experience 7 years of bumper crops, followed by 7 years of famine. In the first set of dreams, Joseph interprets the dreams, but by the second set of dreams, we see that Joseph is already engaging in a different process, interpretation that reflects his growing social maturity. Because now Joseph sees that it is God who gives dreams, and God who gives him the gift of correct and timely interpretation of those dreams. When he's faced with Pharaoh's dreams, not only does Joseph see that these dreams predict 7 years of plenty, then followed by 7 years of famine, he also convinces Pharaoh to prepare for the years of famine. So Joseph is not only a dream interpreter, but he's a person of action. He established a care plan for dealing with the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, and he developed solutions to the problem facing Egypt. And he didn't lose any time in implementing his plan for saving the country from disaster. He planned and built storage cities, organizing an original system for collecting 1/5 of Egypt's produce during the years of plenty by storing it in silos. Joseph sees God's hand in the dreams and in his own capacity to interpret them. For example, he says, "As for Pharaoh having had the same dream twice, it means that the matter has been determined by God and that God will carry it out." Genesis 41. A dream interpreter now at his peak, Joseph does the sacred work of tikkun olam, of world repair, improving upon the future, which is even more important than predicting it. Those of us who believe that in dreams we too can still hear God's voice, believe that in our divinely inspired dreams, God reaches out to us, offering us healing, comfort, teaching, wisdom, and assistance as we make decisions and anticipate what will happen in the future. As for Joseph, from being a dreamer of dreams, Joseph became the person of the dream, a man who experienced the dream as a burden and as a responsibility and a course of action from which there could be no digression. Joseph's greatness was not just that he developed a sensitive ear and an ability to listen to what others were saying, but he was also ready to assume responsibility for transforming dreams into reality. Joseph was a person who got things done. He was not a dreamer who shirked his responsibilities. He was a hard worker who willingly used his skills for turning Pharaoh's dreams into a strategy for survival.
Thank you for that, Reb Deb. You really laid a foundation for our discussion by going through so many of the details, even that were not covered in the video, and then showing the relevance to our work today and our current circumstances. Sheikh Hassan, as always, says, "It's yours." So, it's yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, dear Rabbi, it was amazing. And it was truly amazing, and how much is the closeness and how much we have a common, even interpretations for the same story. That's so amazing. And I'm so happy and delighted to be with you today, and to continue this beautiful series about Joseph's story. As I told you the last time, that I have, because it is the only complete story in the Quran, Joseph's story. We have it in one surah called Surah Yusuf, Joseph's story in the Quran. So we have different stations of the story, and so I just divided to different axes or themes. So the first one, we spoke about the dream of Joseph and the conversation between Jacob and Joseph in the Quran. And then we spoke about the Sufi definition about the spiritual and mystical meanings of the dream from the Sufi perspective. So I'm also would like to send here to send you a link for Joseph's story from the Quran, the whole surah from the Quran, so you can read it also in English. And just 1 minute. Sorry. So now I will talk about the second theme, which is that Joseph and his brothers, the envy and resentment. Muslim scholars, especially the exegetes, believes that what happened between Joseph and his brothers was caused by an envy. They envied him for the blessings Allah had bestowed upon him, which led them to conspire against him. According to some scholars, envy is the root of all sins. Satan, the devil, invade Adam for the status God had given him. And this was the cause of the first sin. From this, we understand that when Joseph told Jacob about his dream, Jacob could only warn him, saying, "Don't tell your dream to your brothers, lest they devise a plot against you," knowing that envy is a gateway for the devil to tempt hearts. Jacob realized from the outset that Joseph's dream was a sign of his early prophethood, and therefore wanted to hide it from his brothers. He knew that the devil, who lost his position with God because of his arrogance, invades humans in general and prophets in particular, because they are the chosen ones of God. Hence, Jacob feared for Joseph from the devil plot through his brothers. Jacob's preference for Joseph over his brothers was not merely emotional, but because he saw that God's blessing on his house was great. His grandfather Abraham, his father Isaac, and himself were a prophet, and he saw that Joseph would also be a prophet. He considered him a divine gift to the family of Jacob. Nevertheless, his love and affection for his other sons did not cease. He continued to treat them as errant sons, not as enemies, even though their mistakes was grave. This shows Jacob's realization that God is the absolute wise on how conducts matters according to his judgment. As for the Sufis, especially Ibn Arabi, he said the brothers' plot and throwing Joseph into the well was not pure evil, but rather a divine arrangement for something greater. He likened Joseph throwing into the well to the covering of divine light in the darkness of nature. And so the brothers, as a symbolizing the energy, the angry and lustful force of the soul that are jealous of the luminous spirit. Joseph, for him, the story is manifestation of universal law. Spiritual light is always fought by the forces of darkness. But God reveals his light despite any malice or envy. Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani believed that trials that come from relatives are more severe than those that comes from strangers. Therefore, God wanted to raise Joseph through the experience of injustice from his family, so that would be patient and raise his status. As for Moses bin Maimon, the Rambam, in a Jewish perspective, he believes that the envy of the brothers, the sale of Joseph and his descents to Egypt were part of a hidden divine training to prepare the children of Israel to face famine in the future. For him, the brothers are not more human characters, but instruments in a plane of divine providence. He points out that evil and envy may be tools for achieving greater good. Here we recall the Arab saying, things are known by their opposites. For what appears to be evil may conceal great good within it. So, then they talk. Then we know the story that traders from Arab traders was passing through, and they found him in the whale. There is a small difference here between the two stories in the Quran and the Bible, but in the Quran they just throw. They mention that they throw him and then just found him. Arab people or the Ismailis, and then they took him to Egypt and they sell him there. But he was bought by the one who bought him. He was a very powerful man, mentioned in the Bible as Potiphar. In the Quran he mentioned by El-Aziz, and his wife mentioned by Zulaykha. The name, of course, was from the stories and the but of Zulaykha, but not in the Quran. So Joseph arrived at the house of Al-Aziz in Egypt as a young boy, and Al-Aziz brought him into one of the most important centers of power of his time, and asked his wife to raise and care for him. Thus Joseph entered a new phase of trials. Allah glorified and exalted be who gave him a beauty that he had not given to anyone else. So much so that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said Joseph was given half of all beauty and the rest was given to the rest of mankind. This beauty was a great trial for him as it became the cause of a new ordeal. Joseph's situations with Zulaykha, the wife of Potiphar, of Al-Aziz. At this stage, Joseph was subjected to the advances of Al-Aziz's wife. Here, Imam Al-Ghazali mentioned in his books the attitude, Joseph's attitude represents the highest degree of chastity, as he combined the most difficult conditions of the test. He was a young man in the prime of his youth and lust. He was a stranger with no family or guardian. The woman who tempted him was beautiful and powerful, and the doors were locked. Despite all this, he said, God forbid, and referred the matter to his Lord. Al-Ghazali believes that Joseph is a role model for those who seek to overcome lust and control themselves, and that this situation is an example of the greatest stage of self-struggle. Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani says, solitude and the absence of which reveal the true nature of the servant. Yusuf is a symbolic of the seeker who preserves himself in solitude and thus attains sainthood. He said, the wise man is he who preserves his secret in solitude, just as Joseph preserves himself in the house of Al-Aziz. True piety is in secret, not only in public. So I will finish with the Sufi meaning. Ibn Arabi interprets Zulaykha love for Yusuf as a divine love in a human form. He says Zulaykha, the wife of Potiphar, did not love Joseph, but rather she loved the truth that was revealed to her in Joseph. Even though she did not know it, he believes that the story is not merely a physical temptation, but rather a symbol of the human soul's attraction to divine beauty, manifests in human form. For him, it is a manifestation of divine love hidden behind the evil of the body. Thank you so much. So I will continue the next time the half of this axis and the end, the last axis.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Hassan, for the deep and insightful discussion of the meanings, hidden meanings in the Joseph story, some that are even beneath the surface. You know, for example, we view the relationship between Zuleika and Joseph as being one of temptation and maybe of wrestling with ego or wrestling with passions or, you know, desire for pleasure or self-gratification. But then that is one level of the story, and that is really there. But then there's other levels too, which shows the attraction between them to be a genuine spiritual attraction to the love of God and the love of beauty. Beautiful. Leads right into what I would like to say. So in the Baha'i writings, the very first part of the Baha'i revelation was a book revealed by the Bab, who was the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, in 1844, and he wrote about the Surah of Joseph, a commentary on the Surah of Joseph. And this became the foundation for him gathering his early disciples, 18 people who found him without any effort on his part. And then he built thousands of followers in Persia in the 1800s. And this book, Qiyam al-Asma, which is the name of the Bab's revelation, became sometimes what's called a Babi Quran. It is the same length as the Quran. It is broken up into surahs like the Quran is. It actually has 111 surahs. Each surah in the Qiyam al-Asma corresponds to one verse in the Quranic version of the Joseph story in 12. So it's a massive work, and it includes a commentary giving esoteric, symbolic, and allegorical meanings to the text. As a matter of fact, the Bab says that the number of meanings are countless. This is true of all of the sacred writings from the Baha'i perspective, whether they're in the Torah, the New Testament, Quran, or the Gita, or other books of world religion. But the Bab taught that the meanings of the Word of God are like a limitless ocean without a shore, and every letter has meaning, even the little dots, which in Hebrew are called nukudot, I think in Arabic something similar, nakud or something like this, right? The dots that represent the vowels, that every little particle has meanings that can extend. So for at one level, the story of Joseph is just as it presents itself on the surface, the life and trials of one servant of God and how God maneuvered him through his various tests and trials to a place where he could provide for his family. But the mystical meanings center around the fact that Joseph's true identity was obscured from his brothers. The story, you remember, goes that Joseph became the head of food distribution in Egypt, and of course he was decked out as an Egyptian official. His brothers were in Canaan, and they were undergoing famine, and the father sent them to Egypt to get food from the Egyptians, and they entered in before this official, and they were asking him for food to help them and so forth, and they didn't recognize Joseph as their own brother, who they thought that might have died, or they sold, the father thought he might have died, but the brothers sold him into slavery according to the Torah version, or he was picked up by the Ismaili caravan in the Quran. Either way, they didn't recognize Joseph. So the lack of recognition and then the eventual revelation of his true identity becomes a drama for all the messengers of God, all the prophets of God, and all the faiths of the world are not known or not recognized when they begin to teach. And so Moses had opposition, and he ran away to the desert for 40 years. Jesus wasn't accepted by the majority of people in his time. The prophet Muhammad was opposed by the people in Mecca and had to flee to Medina. And Baha'u'llah was in prison and under house arrest for 40 years. And the list goes on, that all of these prophets had these trials to undergo before their movement, their religious institutions and so forth really took hold and were established in the earth. So the story of Joseph becomes a metaphor for the failure to recognize God's prophets and of their eventual recognition of it. Albert and I were talking before. We have so much to say. I'm going to save a little bit for next time about the symbolism of Joseph's coat. Whether we call it many colors or long stripe, there are very different translations and interpretations of that. But that has deep meaning throughout the story, so much that the coat almost becomes a character that reappears throughout the story and plays into this role of identification, denial, and then eventual recognition of the prophets. The other thing that is common in this esoteric interpretation is kind of a numerology based on the significance of numbers that are given to each letter. In Judaism, it's called gematria. In Islam, it's called abed. But like the Aleph, the A has the number 1, and the Ba, the Beit has the number 2, and so on through the whole alphabet. And so you can assign numeric values then to any word based on this system of counting. And it's really interesting the way the number 12 reappears in the Joseph story. First of all, it's Surah 12 in the Quran. So we're starting with that. Then in the Bab's work, Qayyum al-Asma, Qayyum, if you add up the letter values of it, comes to 156. And if you add 156, what do you get? 12, the same as the 12 brothers. The name Yusuf also, if you do the values of each of the letters in the name Yusuf, as it's written in Arabic, it also comes to 156, also adding up to 12. And so the name Qayyum means the self-sufficient, the name of God in Islam and in the Baha'i faith. And it means that God, of course, is independent, he's sovereign, and he's the one who is the sustainer of all life, the creator, who rules over creation. And so in the Bab's interpretation, the reconciliation of the brothers, bringing the family back together after all of the horrible things that happen, requires divine intervention. The role of God cannot be discounted from that. And so then God's maneuvering things in the background, letting Joseph go through his trials, but then eventually rising to this high position in the Egyptian court. All these things are seen as being divinely directed. And to underscore the significance of this, the Bab points out in Qayyum al-Asma that the saying in Arabic, which is the core teaching, La ilaha illa Allah, I hope I didn't slaughter it, Abed. My pronunciation of Arabic is not so good, but it means there is no God but God. There's no God but Allah. And how many letters are there in the original spelling of this? 12. So then we come back to the cycle of 12 being a cycle of completeness. So when the family was together without Joseph, there was a lack. He was missing. And to come to completeness, he had to be brought back into the family, which of course the story does. So 12 becomes a symbol then of reunification. And we do see this number 12 appearing in all the Abrahamic faiths, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles of Christ in Christianity, and in Shia Islam, the 12 imams. Who the hidden imam was the 12th imam. It's a whole story in itself. But the Baha'i faith has a lot to say about the return of the imam and the completion of this 12, again, in that cycle. So the reunification is pictured in the 12, but also the hand of God in bringing this about is essential. So much more can be said about that, and some of it we'll save till next time. But I would just like to point out that some significant points comparing the Torah account to the Quranic account that may be subject for your discussion when we do the breakouts. In the Quran, Joseph has the dream of the sun and the moon and the stars all bowing down to him, and he tells his father, and the father says, "Don't tell your brothers," because he's concerned about their jealousy. In the Bible, he tells them. So they are jealous. But interestingly, Joseph is very naive through all of this. And he doesn't see his brother's jealousy, and he goes to meet them in the field, and he makes himself vulnerable to being thrown in the well, and so that we saw happen. But the topic of conversation you might like to consider is, if you're aware of a certain truth, even if it's a spiritual truth that you're absolutely certain of, like Joseph was about this dream, when is it good not to tell everybody about it? What's the wisdom of keeping certain things back at certain times as opposed to revealing them? So that's one subject for discussion. Another really interesting addition in the Quran story, and I think Sheikh Abed might have made reference to this, that when Zuleika is attracted to Joseph, her girlfriends get to hear about it. And they're kind of making fun of her, for being attracted to this slave boy. And so she invites them over for a banquet. And when they see Joseph, they're so impressed by his beauty, amazed by his beauty, that they cut their hands with their dinner knives. So this is a deep subject with many possible metaphorical meanings. What's going on here? Why are they shown cutting themselves, and what does it mean on the spiritual journey, if we look at this in that larger sense, to rein ourselves in, so to speak, or somehow limit ourselves in that. One more point that I thought was really interesting is Zuleika, who was Potiphar's wife, unnamed both in the Torah and in the Quran, but named in the Islamic tradition in the stories, kind of like midrash for Muslims, if you will. And in that story, the love between Joseph and Zuleika is real. And Joseph refuses her because she's already married, and he doesn't want to violate that relationship with his family. But later, according to the Islamic midrash, if you will, the Potiphar dies, and Joseph and Zuleika get together as a couple, and they have genuine love. So their attraction is shown to be real, but the timing wasn't right, and this is why Joseph rejected her. So anyway, hopefully there's some fruitful discussion there, topics for you as we go into small group. It's wonderful to see all of your faces here tonight. From some of you I know, some I don't, from a variety of different organizations. And we'll turn it over to Chris now to organize our small groups.
Welcome, welcome. You're muted, Abed. Everyone's muted.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
my group, anyone who just want to talk to be the representative, that will be amazing. If you, we didn't mention name yet.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Dan, we'll have you do that.
I could do a little bit. I wish I remembered, I mean, because there's just so much to learn from you, Elsalam. But, we really did see a lot of similarities in the stories, and that the similarities basically made, I mean, the differences made the similarities stronger, and this and the similarities, made any differences, which, of course, there are, easier to understand. We talked about, in both stories, really deal a lot with human relations, and people, maybe starting out as rivals, but finding that common humanity, and reconciling, and there's also room for forgiveness, and again, common across the traditions, for really following the ways of God.
Thank you, Daniel. How about from another group?
Okay. I was in group 1, and we all agree we absolutely love the Joseph story. We love it because of what it teaches about forgiveness. We love the family aspect of it and how that relates to so many modern families. The family dynamics is very relevant for life today, for the dreams and the interpretations of the dreams, for the growth and the change that it presents to us, and for the tests that these people were definitely tested. And we're all pretty fascinated by how many different aspects there are. I mean, we got the Quranic and the biblical and the portion from the Baha'is, so we got different perspectives and some from traditions, and it just seems like it's endless. It goes on and on. There is just so very, very much to be learned from the Joseph story, and it seems like you can go deeper and deeper. So we're grateful that this was presented tonight. We got a lot out of it. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, what a deep well to keep coming back to. How about another group?
Awesome. So in our group, we covered kind of 2 main topics. The one topic that we covered is how great of a story Joseph is for bringing people together. And it's kind of a unifying story, which is so lovely that we love. And then also we talked about Zuleika's friends cutting their fingers, and how funny of a story that her friends were making fun of her about, having pots for the slave boy. And she says, I'll show them, and brings them over. And then next thing they know, they're cutting their fingers, to show that it's a really funny spin on it. That's it's a very kind of an unexpected spin on it. And we thought that was pretty funny. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. I think there's one more group that hasn't gone yet.
Okay, my name is Jose Martinez. I am Baha'i. My English is not very fluently, but I speak about only one concept. Okay, about each two point in the family is a problem. The number one is the mother or the wife. If the other is the small person, and for example, one family has 3 or 4, and in this case, Abraham have about brother. Okay, where is the small person have a problem with the family? In this case, Jose is small. It's traditional. 4,000 years ago, today the same condition. The small person every time have a problem with the family.
The small one that is extra loved in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
It's actually, it's repeated the same story, and this is what we mentioned before,
the generations.
Yeah, the generation. And it is actually, the two wives, two sons, and then the same thing, Joseph from the second wife, and different son from different wives. So it's the same problem in the same families.
Yes. This is social problem in the family.
In this family.
Yeah. Blended family. Right? To use a modern phrase.
The mother family, TV program.
Telenovela.
Telenovela, yes, TV program.
Yeah, it is funny to think of Zuleika's friends so distracted by Joseph they don't see themselves and they cut themselves while they're at dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was also an additional evidence for what Al-Ghazali says, that it's the thing was there much higher and bigger than just a pure beauty of just a normal person. There is something much bigger and higher. So when they just saw him, they didn't realize what's going on. They didn't realize themselves, because they was just like gonna steal them from themselves, and this wasn't a humanitarian thing. It's just something much higher and much bigger. So, and this is what she was experiencing every day, and then they understand her again and understand what she going through. So after this accident, all of them put their efforts to put him in the jail, and they succeed to put him in the jail. Unmute yourself, dear Ted.
Thank you. And Sheikh Abed, you can probably say more about this, but in the Islamic traditional stories, right, not Quran, but traditional stories, Joseph and Zuleika get back together after Potiphar dies.
Yes, there's
and it's a great love story, and so it shows that they had attraction, and it wasn't that Joseph wasn't attracted to her, but that he exercised restraint because she was married and it was appropriate, and so forth and so on. So patience, the lesson of patience and waiting for the right time and everything is embedded in the story.
Right. Actually, we have different sources of the stories after the Quran, of course, and what the Prophet said, the Sunnah, and this is the highest sources that we have. Then most of the stories, it's coming from the Israeli traditions, which is, we can call it, because the Prophet, he give us the permission to read and to understand the stories from the Jewish tradition. And then we have different sources of the stories, but regarding to the traditions, yes. And after that, she asked to bring her back her beauty as when she was young, and he prayed God, and this one of the miracles that he did to make her a beauty and a young again. And they married. Yes, and they become a husband and wife, and he had the same position as Potiphar had before. He became Aziz of Egypt, Al-Aziz. Yes.
Yeah, so fascinating. Wow. So we're going to reconvene next month and continue this discussion. Abed Robin and I have both saved some material. We have to consult with Rabbi Deb to see if she's available. So we picked the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, which hopefully works for most of you, if not all of you. And I'll find the date here in just a second. November the 25th. And on a Tuesday night, same time, same station. And we'll have Joseph Part 3.
Yes.
You will learn about the great symbolism of the coat, what the many-colored coat or the long tunic, however, what the different interpretations are and why and what they mean. And, you know, for Baha'is, you mentioned many colors, and right away we have many thoughts about the significance that has. So we'll save some of it for next time.
Wonderful.
Much love, dear all.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
And
Bye-bye. Shalom, shalom.
shalom,
Okay.
shalom.
Aloha.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Bye.
Night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Good to see
Bye,
you.
everybody.
And
Peace, peace, peace.
Shalom Aleichem. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Aloha.
Aloha, Jose.
Yes.